count of three, we'll clap into the microphone. So 1, 2, 3.
Close enough.
That was a matter. Who's going to be hosting? Is it going to be you or me? Like taking the control of the conversation and everything.
Yeah. Two men with severe anxiety disorder trying to run a conversation.
Yeah, that suddenly occurred to me. I'm just going to have to wing it. Okay, so all right, I'm gonna.
That's what I've been doing.
Okay, 3, 2, 1. Hello, this is a podcast featuring Apple. Apple, yeah, that's your new name now, Apple.
Okay.
Yeah.
I am Steve Jobs.
This is theory of obscurity. We're just going to keep rolling. This is like a Kenny Everett thing where we just keep all the outtakes in. Okay.
Yeah.
So we are looking at two different obscure or sort of fairly obscure things. It sort of depends. And I have chosen an obscure thing for Applemask, aka Matthew.
Hello.
And he has chosen something for me. Tell us about the Kristal. So where did you first see it and so on forth?
The Kristal is a video game, theoretically, that I bought, or my dad bought for me, from, I think it would have been B-Wise by then, the chain of discount bollocks stores that sell, clothes and trinkets, and they had a little video games, a sad little video game section, and it had a copy of Pushover, the Quavers tie-in game, which turned out to be pirated. It had Frontier Elite 2, and it had this thing called the Kristal, which looked quite intriguing. It had quite an interesting logo with the words written out in a sort of fantasy prog metal way, and the back of the box said stuff about exploring the galaxy and your destiny is in your own hands and all of that.
Yeah.
And so it sounded good, so we bought it because we didn't have many video games. We had the built-in version of Breakout that came with the computer.
Yeah. What system was it?
IBM PC or compatible.
Ah, yes. Okay. Yeah.
It was a 486.
Right. Okay.
Basic MS-DOS, steam-powered sort of little hamster running around in a wheel in the middle of it. So we bought the Kristal, and we installed it, and it turned out to be a load of old bollocks.
Yes, as these things often are. Yeah.
It was like an adventure game, but it never got round to telling you what was going on.
Right.
I did spend quite a while on it, wandering around, even visiting other planets, and usually dying instantaneously because that happens. But I never knew what was going on. I never even heard about this Kristal that was in the title, except in the manual. The manual gives you more information than the game itself does. And none of it seemed to actually connect with what was going on on screen.
So I spent quite a bit of time actually trying to get it to work. Just flat out trying to get it to work. I downloaded all 3 versions of it from that from an abandonware site, and there was the PC version, of course. There was the Amiga version, which I had played. I just vaguely remember playing a demo of years and years ago. It came on a cover disc with something like Amiga format or something. That was the version I eventually ended up playing, because I could not get either the PC or the Atari ST version running whatsoever. Well, with the PC version, there was... I was fiddling about with all the settings, and at one point it was displaying the same screen, stretched out horizontally but doubled on top of each other. Eventually I got it to manage... I got it past the credit sequence, and then the moment when I walked, I think, right, it just seized up and just refused to play anything else. I had to exit out of the DOS box. system.
Yeah.
So after a long story,
Did you actually find an exit button? Because there was no way to quit that I could ever find.
that was actually a common thing in DOS games.
It was,
actually.
yeah.
Yeah. It was like a lot of earlier DOS games, like throughout the whole of the 80s, they just assumed that, there's an off switch on the computer, you can use it. Yeah. But that was before, of course, you had to shut everything down like properly and everything. But there was eventually I got the Amiga version running, and
Did the opening voiceover work? Did you get any versions with the voiceover working?
I actually, in all of them, I was able to hear the voiceover, and I never got as far as the voiceover in any farther than, well, not much farther than that afterwards. It was like IBM PC, of course, it froze on the game properly started, and then the Atari ST froze just as the little menu thing at the bottom loaded up and just stopped there. Yeah. So, there's that. Basically, the whole of the first disc contains the opening credits and a big speech by Patrick Moore. Well, it's not a speech, but like he's narrating some stuff about. I just vaguely remember him talking about the Earth year is 3,000 or whatever, and there's just all this sort of incomprehensible stuff that doesn't really make sense, because I suppose the more you play it, you're meant to like understand it, because it starts in that typical way where you've got amnesia. Well, not 100% amnesia, but you've
hangover.
Yeah, you like, oh god, I'm a space pirate, and where's my spaceship? And then you sort of go around everywhere, and there's all that sort of stuff going on. Actually, the sound quality on the Amiga is the best on that. On the DOS version, it's like, it's just a horrible scratchy sort of thing.
When I originally bought it, I couldn't even get that much.
Right.
I just got and then it cut out completely and started the game.
Oh god, yeah. But that's probably because of it was designed for slightly slower computers. Running DOS games was
possibly
just an appalling.
It was one of those computers with a turbo button.
Yeah, and the weird thing about turbo is that apparently it just made things slower or something, as what I understand, what I've been told anyway.
I can't remember it ever making very much of a difference either way on my computer.
Yeah, but
apparently that whole speech is backstory, world building.
Yeah.
None of which has any bearing on what's actually going on.
Yeah.
He's just he's listing exports and the currency and things.
Yeah, it's there's this and beforehand also you get like this big sort of opening credit like scroll, which lists all sorts of things, because this was like right at the very start of the thing when.
I did get that on the PC version.
You do, yes. On the version I downloaded anyway. Yeah, and it's like it seems that all three versions have a scrolling opening credits thing, because this was round about the start where you had people thinking they were like film directors when they were making games, and that's something that's never really gone away. But
no.
The weird thing is that I actually. While I was like fiddling about with all the settings and stuff, I eventually ended up reading most of what I could of the credits, and there's stuff about like there's thanks to, which are like more thanks to inspirations, and one of somebody listed is Elaine Page.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
it's just and
I
there's
remember that now. Actually.
And there's like something about I think they just name check a bunch of West End musicals as well. There's also claims that it's based on a play.
Yeah, supposedly it's based on a play someone wrote, but wasn't performed until after the game came out.
Yeah, it's one of those weird sort of attempts at some sort of literal multimedia thing that you.
Yeah.
But as for the game itself, it's. It's absolutely bloody awful. It's just, it's just the first character you meet is immediately off-putting. It's this sort of massive, like female lips as a plant, and it's called luscious lips or lipsosa.
Luscious lips here or something.
Yeah, something like that.
It just goes half the time.
Yeah, because I read the manual, which basically has a little bit of opening thing with a walkthrough basically of the first planet you're on. Yeah, and it's like this weird thing where it's you have to you go up to somebody, but like you press F1 to start a conversation, and like you have to type things in exactly, and it's like it's sort of imitating. It sort of make you think, I can really communicate with these people, but all the time you just get these odd sort of vague sort of stock answers when it doesn't recognize anything, which is like almost every time, you know.
It would have been that speech system would have been quite innovative if it had at any time seemed like they were doing it deliberately.
Yeah.
And rather than just they didn't know how to make a video game and they assumed this is what you did.
Yeah. It does give that feeling of something designed by a person or people who weren't really properly familiar with games at that time, and saw, they'd heard about Amigas and like PCs, Atari STs having multimedia capabilities, and like CD-ROM was on the way at that point, and they thought, oh, we can like move in on this new medium, as it were. And you got a lot. They
had this sub Frank Herbert play that they've been working on, and they thought, why don't we turn it into a video game? That's the wave of the future.
Exactly. Yeah. One thing I noticed actually about the walkthrough is that the first thing that you're meant to type in for that lips creature is actually printed out wrongly, because I typed it in and she just goes and then I slightly rephrased it to how are you doing, or what is it, and I actually got the proper answer back. So the walkthrough contains a major error right at the very beginning, which is nice,
And that's pretty much the only clue you have, the only thing that actually tells you anything about what's going on and what the gameplay actually is.
Yeah,
that's all you get, the walkthrough. That's the only clue.
Yeah, it's like a lot of games throughout most of the 80s where no matter how simple it was, you were kind of just sort of plonked in there on your own for the most of the time.
Yeah.
Sometimes it would be fairly obvious what you had to do, but other times, as games started to get a little bit more complex, it started to just sort of become just sort of confusing, and even sometimes with the liner notes or the little mini manual, it would just be... I just remember playing ZX Spectrum games and just sort of endlessly wandering about places and just,
Well, a lot of the times, like, I think it was Jet Set Willy, they didn't bother programming an ending. They just, nobody's going to get this far, let's just stop.
Yeah, it's... There were, I think there's like more than one game like Jet Set Willy that just ends either without any kind of ending or just like a major bug somewhere. Yeah. It was just people were still working out how to make games in the first place. People didn't know like what fun was in video games for the most part, apart from Nintendo or somebody. Yeah. They cracked it in 1985 with Super Mario Brothers 1, and everybody else took about another 5 or 6 years to catch up, it seems.
So how far did you actually get? Did you find the plot at all?
No, I got as far as trying to go to a planet, and I just ended up getting shot at by loads of people.
That's the arcade sequences.
Oh yeah, that's the worst thing. I noticed in the manual there's also some sort of swashbuckling thing, it says, or something. I never got that far, I just couldn't.
Yeah, I remember there's a sword fighting thing and it's bloody annoying. You had to hit the right button on the keyboard at the right time.
Yeah.
And you inevitably die every time.
Yeah, it's like an old-fashioned version of like a quick time event, I suppose, what they call it now.
Sid Meier's Pirates had just come out and they did it properly.
Yeah. But the space travel thing, first of all, you go into hyperspace and you just sort of plonks you like, and like, oh, okay, where am I? There's no planet, and all of a sudden, it's like the whole screen like shakes and like flashes, and I'm sort of panicking. So what the hell where am I meant to be going? Eventually, I work out that you're meant to sort of go, well, at least with this planet, you're meant to go like right up to the top left. Just keep going to the top left, and eventually you see these winged lizard people with guns flying at you. And the worst thing about it is because it's designed for systems that have a joystick with just one button, and the button does more than one thing. It doesn't just fire. That when you hold it down and push up or down, it's meant to speed up or slow down your ship. It's weird because spatially it doesn't give you the feeling of going up and down, but it does seem to make the people you're shooting at manage to dodge you. I was like going up and shooting, and then they sort of fly up and fly down.
It's even worse on a keyboard.
Oh,
I never had a joystick.
Yeah, I had a joypad plugged in, a USB joypad, so that helped. So on the actual back on the planet, I mean, I didn't get any farther than that because I was just relentlessly shot down every single time whenever I attempted to go anywhere.
Yeah.
But
well, I'll tell you what happens. Half the time, you spend half an hour shooting at these things. You finally shoot them all. It says, "Congratulations, you shot them all. Now we'll take you to the planet." And it cuts to another shot of your character, who incidentally is called Dance's Freak.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
I think it's important to point that out.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
I think it's important to point that out. Standing in a sort of volcanic caldera, and then it said you were incinerated. Game over.
Yeah.
Because you went to a planet that happens to be a ball of lava.
Oh yeah, that's so typically the kind of thing, the kind of design decision that somebody would make if they don't really know anything about games or anything. Yeah.
And how were you supposed to know that? Because your only navigational aid is a bunch of meaningless symbols at the start.
Yeah, I mean,
at the start of the journey, I don't know what any of it meant.
Yeah, it seemed to be either they were or were based on astrological signs. I think that's the only.
Some of them might have been, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, and there was also these little dials that kept twiddling around like really tinily on like the deck of your ship, and I wondered whether they actually were pointing to anything, but they didn't seem to be pointing to anything. They just sort of randomly going around. Back on the planet, it was like I was walking around, and so you have to there's like this weird thing where there's two sort of levels. There's a foreground and a background, and so like just going normally, like in a Sierra Online or a LucasArts, where you just sort of walk all over the place. It's just there's two sort of lines, planes rather, and then
It took me a little while to figure that out the first time I played it as well.
Yeah, and it's
you can go into the background.
Yeah. Eventually, I managed to go to some sort of pointless room where there were some guards walking about, and I can't remember what they said first, but then I tried to engage in conversation. They said I just got an odd reply back, and then before I'd even left the room, I touched one of the guards again. And they said, "Oh, you're back then." So it's like it just that perfect sort of dreadfully designed sort of NPC sort of thing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, another thing, picking up objects. Such a terribly implemented way they did it. You just sort of walk around, and then something starts flashing, and you press, I think, F2 to pick it up. It's just and you can't even see it. It's like it's even worse than the thing that you usually find in a lot of other actual adventure games of the time, which is just this called pixel hunting, where you can kind of see where it is at least or something, but you have to click on a precise thing, and that's even worse because also I think some of it is randomized. Something is randomized that keeps moving about.
Might just be doing that to confuse you.
Yeah, so that's as far as I got with the actual game itself, but
it's about as far as I ever got as well. I managed to land on one other planet once. It was like this sort of quasi-medieval, and I met this woman who said she was an apothecary, and she had a thing that I'd ordered that I didn't know anything about and couldn't ask her anything about. That was about it, really.
That's about it, really. It's kind of like the operative phrase, really, that sums it all up, really. Yeah. But as for the game, it's the people who released the game. I am aware of the publisher, Cinemaware, and they were quite a big deal on the Amiga scene at the time. This seems to be one of a few games that they didn't develop in-house. They sort of got the rights of it from another developer and published
Yeah.
it themselves. There was one other game they did like that that I know of called King of Chicago, which sounds a lot more interesting, and it functions a lot better than what this game is, definitely. Yeah, Cinemaware, they usually did things like the first game that came out was Defender of the Crown, which is a game that was basically sold on its graphics and sound, because it came out in like 86, 87.
One of the first games to be sold on that kind of basis.
Exactly, yeah. It was because up till then, I mean, games visually and sonically were like really limited. They also did a Three Stooges game, which is, I've seen people play online, and it's just absolutely incomprehensible if you don't know anything about the Three Stooges, which I certainly don't. It's just like that. At one point, you're trying to get a violin, and then somebody's being beaten up at the top part of the screen, and there's people throwing pies at you, and it's just absolutely incomprehensible.
Yeah, you need to increase your education on the Stooges.
Yes, yeah. The most I know about the Three Stooges is a tape that was released by the New Jersey radio station WFMU called Shemparama, which had one of the people in the Three Stooges called Shemp, and it's just recordings of like Three Stooges VHS, like looped and played over and over again, and like spliced using tape, and you just hear like a constant soundtrack of like them going wah 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 wah, just constantly, like for about 20 minutes on a side.
Was it made by Steve Reich?
Well, it was inspired. I think it was actually genuinely inspired by that sort of thing. Yeah, it was like they did it like a deliberate. The story was that they, at the time, like loopy sort of looped new age kind of thing was big, so they decided to do sort of a parody of that. And one of the tapes begins with one of them somebody involved with it doing an imitation of, I think, Mo Howard, the bloke with the bold haircut, going, it's like imitating a phone message, and it says, "I'm sorry, but problem is I'm dead. Yeah, I've been dead for 30 years," or something like that. And then it goes into just absolutely insane. Somebody said that it was like if William Basinski went insane and then made an album afterwards.
I think you might have done that once or twice.
Yes, I have too. Cinemaware, their best known games probably It Came from the Desert, which is an imitation of 50s B movies. There's like you have to shoot a massive ant or something, and you're stuck in like a desert town, and it's apparently, from a game design point, it's supposed to be actually very good, and it's basically the only one of their games which is actually like enjoyable to play, other than look at these 16-bit graphics and sound in the year 2020. There's so naturally that was the one that got a really, really terrible FMV version on, I think, the Sega CD or the Turbo Graphics 16 or something like that. And the video was reduced to like 4 colors, it looks like, and it's like all just like that kind of dithery look. It just looks absolutely awful. And like the original version from 1988,
Apple Mac Pontilism.
Yeah, only it's even worse because it's in like 4 weird sort of earth colors, like sort of like you've got like a sandy yellow and a sort of a murky green, and there's like a sort of like a reddish pink or something. It looks horrendous, like even worse than that kind of thing usually looked on CD-ROM PCs at the time, which were like blocky and everything. So that was the Kristal. Should we give some sort of rating to this? Do we? What kind of rating could we give it to this?
Well, it's a load of old bollocks, really, isn't it?
Yeah, load of old bollocks out of 10. Yeah, that seems fair enough. Okay, so second thing. So this was my pick for you, and you just tell me your first impressions of it when you watched it and everything.
But first impression was surprise, really. I didn't know there was a colorized version of Un Chien Andalou. or just of 1 minute 30 seconds or so of it. Second reaction was, oh god, here's the bit where where Boonwell slices her eye. I'm going to have to look away. But as it turned out, that bit wasn't actually there. They cut before the razor goes in.
Yes.
It's basically two of the set pieces, the razor bit at the beginning, and the piano.
Yeah.
They've taken those two set pieces and coloured them in, and put them together under the auspices of MTV.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure why, but I'm glad they did.
Well, I remember the first time I ever saw that actually was way back in like 93, 94, because it was shown. It was originally made, I believe, around about 1986, 87, for showing on as like a little time filler on American MTV. And that same year, I think, MTV Europe started, and there must have been a bit of a delay until they got round to using it as filler themselves on MTV Europe, as it was then. And they would show it was just lots. You used to get lots of little interstitial things, of course, in MTV Europe back then. And I remember when I first saw it, it was like I think I'd already seen like a load of clips of Un Chien Andalou by then. Yeah. And it was just this. They keep the music that I think is generally used for the film. It used to come on in just before a video or something would come on, and sometimes my little sister, who was probably only about 6 years old or so at the time, she would run out of the out of the room, because she would like she'd hear like the that's in a packing. Apparently what it's meant to be, it was like a commentary apparently on both editing movies for TV and colorization, as in it was like a sort of apparently I think at the beginning it says something like edited and colorized for television by G. Brotmeyer. Yeah, I think it was.
It has special colorization credits.
Yeah, I think that was actually the name of an ad agency, and somebody at the ad agency. Hang on, let me look this up because I can do this here.
While you're doing that, I'll fill in a bit of context, because I didn't know it was meant to be a commentary on anything, but in the mid-'80s, colorization of classic films was something of a hot topic.
Yes.
In broadcasting in America at the time, because Ted Turner was constantly seeking out films in the public domain and colouring them in to show on TNT. And he did it to It's a Wonderful Life.
Yes.
And particularly badly, apparently. To the extent that James Stewart actually appeared before the American equivalent of the Broadcasting Standards Commission to plead that it not be shown anymore. I think Turner's efforts in this respect pretty much destroyed the reputation of colorization. And that's all to the good as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I mean, this probably came out like 86, 87, so this was around about the time I think they were having those hearings, I think, probably.
Yeah.
I can't quite, but I'm trying to find Brotmeyer.
Apparently in the Turner colorized It's a Wonderful Life, at the very start, Jimmy Stewart's little brother has a green face.
Well, what? I don't understand how that could have.
No, I'm not entirely certain how that could have happened either. But I think it was Roger Ebert who brought it up, and just far be it for me to argue with Roger Ebert.
Yeah, I'm sure I read somewhere that it was meant to be a commentary. I've got a thing up here saying avant-garde to MTV appropriating pure cinema, and it doesn't seem to mention that, but I'm sure I remember like G. Brotmeyer, that was like because it makes sense in that way, of course, because it's like you've cut out the really horrible eye bit, but like you leave in just a bit of gore, because it's sort of like that. We can go this far, but you can't go farther than that.
It was a lamb's eye, apparently.
Oh yeah,
No, No, it wasn't. It was a calf.
Oh, yeah,
What am I
yeah,
talking
yeah, yeah. I knew it was some kind of animal anyway. But
The important thing is that it still had vitreous humour in its eyeball.
yes, yes. And I actually saw a while back, you know, those obviously those reaction channels on YouTube.
Yeah.
There was an Indian one that got a lot of English people to react to Un Chien Andalou, like the whole thing. It's quite. I mean, it was quite impressive actually to have them react to that. But it's quite. There was bits where, like, you know, when they. Obviously, when that happens, they go, "Oh my god! Oh, what is this?" And when, like, I forget the actual names of the actors, because obviously they don't really have names as characters. But like when the man is going up against that woman, I think names was Simone, who later
Simone something, isn't it?
yeah, Simone, and when he's sort of threatening her, stalking around the apartment, he's like there's like some kids about some boys called 12, and he says, "Oh, just hit him, get a bottle." I mean, they don't get to say a lot of anything particularly interesting, but it is fascinating. Yeah. Oh god, yeah, I just remembered something actually where just before the thing happens, you know, the slicing of the eye, like and there's like this older, but he's like in his late 20s, and he's saying, "Oh yeah, I've seen this one. Yeah, he picks out the moon from the sky and gives it to the girl." I
think he's thinking of a different film.
Yeah, I'm not sure what. Maybe he was misremembering like a George Méliès, or however you pronounce his name. Yeah, but Méliès. Yeah, of course. Yeah, I think actually that famous image of the spaceship that's crashed into the moon's eye has become some sort of meme now, I think.
Everything becomes a meme eventually.
Yeah, I know, yeah. I think it was called something like Creep Moon, or I don't know, yeah.
To be fair, it is a creepy moon.
I mean, it is, yeah. It does stick in your mind, that sort of leering, sort of look on its face, and also the fact that it's got right embedded in its eye. Well, funny enough, it sort of mirrors that Un Chien Andalou itself in a weird way.
Something's gone splash.
Yeah. I'm still trying to find the thing, but yeah, G. Brotmeyer. I'm just going to like search G. Brotmeyer. Oh, okay, Gary Brotmeyer. Make believe history. Yeah, it seems to be an artist. Okay, hang on. I just found.
Are we cutting all of this out as well?
No, I'm keeping this in. Okay, I might trim it down. Yeah, but
this is punk rock.
This is the equivalent of a black and white photocopied fanzine, Sniffing Glue. There's a review here saying that it's calling it the sort of stupid, tacky vandalism that would be offensive anywhere but is unspeakable in a program called Art of Music Video. And like, I get what he means, obviously, but like, looking at his work, it's like a lot of there's altered photographs. There's stuff. Yeah. Stuff, yeah, it's all stuff in the end, isn't it? There's just scans that you put up and wind their way on the internet, and you just look at them for a bit on an Instagram feed, and you think, well, how about that? Now on to some terrible news event.
And at the end of it all, we're an hour closer to death.
Yeah. But
we might want to cut this bit out as well.
Yeah, we'll cut that bit out. Yeah. Anyway, there was something else I wanted to mention about this. And
that's what we should have called it. An hour closer to death. Chriddof and Applemask.
An hour closer to death with Apple and Chriddof. Yeah.
I really regret that name sometimes.
Well, because where did you get that name from again? I forget where you.
I just plucked it out of my head. I had to come up with something, and
yeah. I remember there was a cartoon character, not cartoon, but like a character in the Dandy with part of Banana Man called Appleman, who.
Appleman. Yeah. He was in the cartoon as well.
Yes.
I think he was played by the late Tim Brooke Taylor.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Ugh. 2020.
Sorry about that.
It's okay. Yeah, somebody has a go at that reviewer in the Chicago Reader in a letter published on the 3rd of May 1990, saying, first of all, they quote what I read out earlier, and they say, how could Rosenbaum possibly miss the fact that this MTV art break? Oh yeah, it was called an MTV art break. Yeah, that was the thing with the
Oh, that's right. That's what it said at the start, wasn't it?
The clanking, because there was a lot of interstitial things like that. That's thing, and I just remember that it's quite a famous sound effect, that clang, clang, clang. How could Rosenbaum possibly miss the fact that this MTV art break is lampooning the Ted Turner colorize it if it's a classic mentality with comically grotesque pigmentation? Because that's a thing that also happens when there's also deliberately weird tricks with the colorization. Like first, that Simone lady, she throws a book, and it shows a photograph which is already colored, and when it lands on a table, whatever, it's sort of, there's like a wipe solely within the picture which changes all the colors within just that photo. Then when the bicyclist is cycling past some buildings, they change the color of the city to like a kind of lurid green, and when they fall over, there's like the immediate surrounding pavement turns red. There's a bit where there's this sort of aura which is sort of throbbing around the man, and like there's like that sort of armpit hair. Well, I say armpit hair, but I think it was another type of hair. But
hair anyway.
Yeah, hair. Yeah. So lampooning the Ted Turner colorizer if it's a classic, or that it is a commentary on the commodification of media art in contemporary culture. And Rosenbaum's reaction is Brock Mayer's point, and if anything, the tape can be accused of being a little too obvious. Somebody wake up the critic. So yeah. And on the YouTube thing itself, actually, I might as well actually call this up as well. A comment left by somebody who claims they worked on it.
Oh, there is. I was going to bring that up.
Yeah. It's somebody. Their username is just @waterpub. It was left 6 years ago from now, and they say, I was one of the designers at Color Systems Technology that designed the color palette for this MTV edit of Un Chien Andalou. The sweeping rainbow effect was my idea. Perry DeRoss and Jane Parks also helped with color design. And then he just talks a bit about the film itself. Gary Brockmeyer seems to have kind of commissioned like this colorization company to do it for him, which is sort of a thing that is common, in the art world, of course. And the way that I mean, all sorts of people obviously do it, but Damien Hirst, of course, gets people to do those spot paintings. And
he's more of an art facilitator than an artist.
Yeah, and a lot of his stuff is sort of just. I remember it being claimed that he nicked the ideas for both the spot paintings and something else from a person he met in New York in around about 1990 or something. I do not like a Daniel Hirst at all.
You like him so little, you get his name wrong.
Yeah, actually, that's true. I just think of him as the director of Blur's Country House video, and that's the highest things he's ever done. And that was Anyway, that's basically Un Chien Andalou. What rating do we give this out of 10?
Now that I know that it's a lampoon of Ted Turner's green-faced classic film colouring ways, I really quite admire it as that statement.
Yeah.
With the caveat that I didn't know it was making that statement in the first place.
Yeah, I mean that letter I read out said something. Well, it's a little bit too obvious, but I think it is. Yeah, it's not quite clear enough.
It was at the time.
Yeah, actually, yeah.
In 1986, 87, when everybody was yelling at Ted Turner about colorizing films, I would have probably have made the connection. And if it had, just as a side effect, inspiring some teenagers to check out Louis Buñuel and Un Chien Andalou, and if it inspired curiosity as a side effect, then that's worthwhile as well. That's laudable.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that definitely did happen. I mean, it actually made my little, because I already knew about the film because I've been to like the Museum of the Moving Image that used to exist at the South Bank in London.
Oh yeah.
And they had like a bit about it there. That was part of the exhibit, like the little thing about it.
Yeah.
And my little, even though she was terrified at the time, she later went back to it. And we've seen the full 20-odd minute thing a couple of times now.
I think I first saw it when it was. I'm pretty sure it was on BBC 4 on its first day.
Oh,
they
right.
did this whole Dali thing for its first day. I think that was the first time I saw it.
Right. Okay. Because the Museum of the Moving Image on the South Bank, that was a really, really great place.
One of those places I always regret not going to, because I lived in the sticks on the peninsula. The only museums I went to were exhibitions of Robert Leskowitz and railway museums.
Yeah. I used to also go to the Science Museum a lot, actually, when I was. I remember my dad took me there once. There was a thing there called the launch pad, which was where the kids were able to like hands-on experiments, and there was like funny enough, there was like a little media thing with a video camera was trained on you. You walked in front of it, and then you press these big chunky light up buttons, and they would do like a basic 80s of a video effect, which of course like in like 84, 85 was like amazing, but it's just literally just like mosaic effect, solarize effect, mess up all the colors. But when I first saw Un Chien Andalou in 1993, 94, whenever it was of course I was a bit far removed from all that brouhaha about the the colorization, because obviously that was sort of been swatted down by that point, and it was just this mystery, why is there this colorized version? Also, it cuts that famous bit out, which I know about.
That's how I approached it.
Yeah.
In the end, because you just sent it to me and I didn't have any of that context either.
Yeah. But that's you get the most interesting responses when you go in cold at things with certain things, of course. So, rating, what's out of 10?
Well, it's Un Chien Andalou, so it shouldn't make sense. It would be a category error if we rated it in a way that makes sense.
Yes. So, if maybe I could just put in some sort of funny noise in here, like edit it in afterwards, and that will be the rating.
Yeah, that would work.
Yeah, okay, we'll go with that then.
We'll go with that.
Yeah. Okay, so that about wraps it up for this pilot episode, I suppose it is, wouldn't it be, of this podcast. We're actually putting this together in such a kind of haphazard fashion. We're not sure quite where it's going.
Haphazard people.
We are haphazard people. You might actually be listening to it on my Soundcloud, and we'll put it on either of our YouTube channels, and and so that's going to happen. And the next,
I'll mention it on Patreon.
Absolutely, yeah. And the next,
I mean, I know of podcast hosting websites and vaguely how they operate, because I actually used to have a podcast, but it was shit. So I'm not going to bring it up.
Okay, fair enough.
But I know how these things. I know how to sort of use Podbean or whatever.
Yeah. So that is about it then, really, and we hope you enjoyed this quite chaotic and rather rambly first episode, and hopefully we'll be back.
Well, it doesn't have to be. We can edit out most of the rambling.
Well, I know. I'll be
dead air, dead air.
I know, but actually, I like the little diversions we take. That's nice.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's it, and that is it.
Yeah.
That is it.
Yes.
That's it.
Oh, we should tell the listeners where they can experience these things for themselves if they want to.
Oh yes, of course.
Although I don't recommend it in the case of the Kristal.
Yes, the Kristal is best left in the past, really, just rotting away on a hard drive of our 486 PC. But
Yeah.
the Un Chien Andalou MTV version, I will link that on one of the
Yeah.
uploads of this. Yeah, so there's that.
Yeah, so do check that out. It's Kristal, spelled Kristal, if you absolutely have to, if your curiosity is absolutely killing you.
Yeah.
Google Kristal, spelled like that. But it's not worth it, I promise.
It is not worth it, no. It's just boring and aggravating, and
Yeah.
So, what do we do for an ending? We don't have an outro message we can say. I know, I'll put in another weird sound and that'll be it.